Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Guess who's back?
Back
It's MB2
again.
Underground.
Oh,
Surprise. Hi, it's me, Sarah Kiefer.
and JT. I thought we were doing like a Eminem thing there, but you
No,
kind of laid
because
out on me.
I didn't look at you. I wasn't like seeking your reciprocity.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry. Well, now I know you feel left out, so
I do.
next time I'll make sure you're involved.
I appreciate that.
How's it going, JT?
I'm great today. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good. We haven't done a lot of episodes where we have people coming back. So I'm excited for our second part of an unspecified amount of number series with this gentleman.
Yeah, let's just keep it kind of vague because who knows when he might make another appearance.
Yes, correct.
Is this an appearance or a redo?
What do
clean
you,
up.
What do you mean a redo? I mean, the first one was amazing. I mean,
Totes amazeballs.
granted, I wasn't here, which now I am, so it's got to be better, right? That
Yeah,
sounds
sure.
So super duper humble of me.
Mm-hmm.
No, but we have brought Clint Ellenberg back to the pod.
That's Clinton Ellenberg to you.
That's right. He's our chief revenue officer here at MB2. And we've done it for a reason. Because we have been bombarded with questions from listeners and viewers on YouTube about insurance companies. I hear it all the time when I'm talking to prospective partners. Insurance companies do this, insurance companies do that. I don't like them. I'm trying to get rid of them. And what I think we all thought was, hey, let's bring a subject matter expert back on to maybe answer en masse some of these questions.
JT, you're talking about PPO insurance accepted at the practice, not like health benefits.
That's correct. PPO insurance.
Everybody welcome Clinton Ellenberg.
He's back.
We need to do that every time.
Okay.
And shout out Dr. Greenberg.
I didn't like that.
Oh, okay.
Sound like a velociraptor. No, but I think you bring up a good point. I've been doing more and more discovery days with associates interested in ownership, and they're still learning a lot about the business side. But I've gotten the recurrent question, if it's okay for me to kind of kick us off, of I just want to go out of network. Like that seems to be the consistent theme when I talk about credentialing as a supporter payer strategy. I don't even like insurance companies anymore. We're not getting nearly what we should be getting. I can make more from cash patients. I can't get responses from insurance companies. Like the ongoing theme that I'm seeing has been, why should we even take insurance? So my question for you, Clint, is what's the beef? What's everybody's beef with insurance companies right now relative to practice level reimbursement, not health insurance benefits?
What I think I'll try and do in response is sort of talk about what we do at MB2 to advocate for our owners, but also bridge that to what someone in private practice can do.
I think that's perfect. Since our listeners span a wide spectrum.
Right.
Who knows? We might even split this off into the MB2 Underground Educational Series.
That doesn't exist.
Could
Okay. Well, we got to start somewhere.
we do?
The way, and we start with any owner that asks that same fee-for-service question, why? What is your beef? What are you frustrated with? Is it, which we'll get into, is it the administrative side? Here are some options. Is it the reimbursement side? Okay, let's look at some data. Or is it that you just have heard or read or know forever that being fee-for-service is the holy grail?
Like, what's the problem so we can find a solution?
Right. And so we'll ask why and what are your needs. A lot of folks also might say, well, I want to be fully fee-for-service. And then we'll ask, well, when's your next available new patient appointment? And it might be next week. Well, that certainly doesn't help. And so asking some second, third level questions on why kind of help you diagnose. But I'll sort of start arguing for and against the fully fee-for-service argument.
Okay.
And so kind of play the middle here and try to see if that provides some insight.
Yeah, but let's be honest. If insurance companies were the absolute worst, they ultimately would not exist, right? So there's got to be good. I get it.
Right.
I hear the same things that Sarah hears from prospective partners, which is like, I want to get out of network with these guys because I'm not getting paid, or I can make more, the same thing. So, but there's got to be good and bad on both.
At the end of the day, pretty much anybody, though, what they're trying to do in some way, shape, or form is maximize profitability. at the practice. And they view the fully fee-for-service as that's going to be the holy grail to do that because I'm going to get reimbursed at out-of-network rates or I get to charge my cash fees to patients. There's a lot of considerations on that, I think. First of all, I'd start by telling you that it's almost always been read online about these 5 dentists on my peer group or so-and-so that were successful and had a great result. I will always tell you, and this is a case study, that there are way more that we see when we look at prospective partners that have not had a good outcome, and they're not posting about it on the internet. Typically, the only people that actually post about their results and their success are the folks that were successful, and so you need to view it through the lens of the internet.
Last night I was watching He's Just Not That Into You. So you would say that that's the exception. Those 5 are the exception, not the rule.
In many cases from the data we see.
Okay, got it.
That can be the
in
exception.
our experience.
Right. And so I guess I'll start by saying what value do PPOs or dental insurance provide?
Okay.
First of all, lots of access to new patients. I always describe dental insurance as effectively, it's a expensive marketing. You are providing a discount in return for new patient volume.
I like that. I don't think I've ever thought of it that way, but that's awesome.
It's expensive marketing.
Yeah.
It also helps with treatment plan acceptance because if you have in-network benefits, you're typically going to pay a lower amount out of pocket, and so you're more likely to accept treatment.
Makes sense.
And when you look at dental insurance, the volume coming in the door and the treatment acceptance can sometimes offset that marketing discount. When you reach a line is if you're booked out 8 months and you can't fit in a new patient and you really have no other option than to work on what I call the volume side of it, then we can talk and let's have that conversation. But they provide that access to volume. And what I also like to look at PPO is you can always find a doctor in network with as far as when you go to a provider directory, right? Mm-hmm. More and more patients are educated. That's the first place they go is to the provider directory to say 100%. What's the nearest in-network provider, and it's math. More people have dental insurance than they did 3, 5, 7, 10 years ago. Yeah. Especially post-COVID when employers are fighting over more and more employees, they want to provide richer benefits. One thing they're going to add is dental.
Got it.
So you got more people with dental insurance, more people that are educated to go to the provider directory, and they're savvy. They're expecting these discounts. The last thing I'll say about on the PPO side is that dental insurance is relatively unique in the insurance landscape where the higher the cost of a treatment, the more the patient actually pays as a share, right? So like
percentage-wise,
an exam, a percentage of a larger dollar, right? Because an exam, for example, if you go in for an exam and a cleaning, that's typically covered at 100% for preventive care. So I don't care where I go because it's free,
right?
But if I need a crown, that's typically covered at maybe 50% of something that might be $1,000. I'm going to price shop that if I have the opportunity to do it. And so you actually have this interesting conundrum from an insurance perspective where you've got people that are trying to get educated through the provider directory, and it actually has a direct impact on their pocketbook. Whereas you look at, for example, the medical side, the higher something costs, the more likely it's going to hit their deductible, and they're not going to pay any more, and they don't care how much the headline cost is.
Interesting.
Right? So you've got some price sensitivity on the patient side.
Yeah.
Where, and this is probably a hard question to answer, but it's one that I'm curious about. Where is that line, or where have we seen that line where it is, I don't care because this is my provider, this is my dentist, this is my trusted practitioner, versus this is too expensive, I can't do it, I've got to go elsewhere. Like, is there a line there that bifurcates those two?
So let's go back to the fee-for-service side then.
Yeah.
Okay. When we talk to our owners, for example, we always look at price and volume. And price being how much is a service cost and how much treatment is getting accepted. Volume is how many patients are coming in the door, roughly, right? And if you go fully fee-for-service, you lose one of those levers, which is the volume side. You are not getting access to as many new patients, and so you have to make it all back up in price.
Okay.
Can I interrupt here?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Just as a general point, and I know that there's no such thing as one size fits all, but would you say the first thing that you might suggest to somebody who wants to go out of network for whatever the reason is to start with the volume piece? Hey, if you are chock full of patients for the next 12 months, maybe it is something to consider, because theoretically that volume should be backfilled by people who are waiting. Yep.
Or if you don't have room to expand or add an associate, there's other. Because
Yeah, sure. Like I said, it's not a
you
one
guys
size
have
fits
said
all.
Discovery days all the time. We always say the one thing we can't do is make new patients out of thin air.
Yep.
There's no new patient tree you can go and shake.
Bummer.
Right. And so if you can't get them, then you've cut off one of those sources.
Yep.
So I like to say the best look of practice that we see from a reimbursement perspective is one that has a mix of, say, 50-50, 60-40, maybe even 70-30 on the cash to PPO side.
Okay.
So that you've got options, right? But I'll tell you what to consider if you want to go fully fee for service. We talked about the internet already. The people that were not successful are not talking about it. Number two, when you look at a population of fee-for-service patients, there's a whole bunch of dentists in a market that are probably fighting over those same patients. Their retention is much lower. So your average patient retention, meaning they come back within 18 months for a visit, on a cash patient is average 65, maybe 70%. So you're losing 30% of your patients a year, sometimes 40%. On the PPO side, it's closer to 90% retention, so you're losing maybe 10% a year.
Well, I was going to say, we jumped into like doctors that maybe want to go fee for service, but we had just touched on the pros of insurance. What are some of the common frustrations that you're hearing on the side against insurance? Because that's where I see the majority of it.
Yeah.
And that usually comes from reimbursement, but
Yeah, it's reimbursement and it's administrative hassles.
okay, trying to
And-
actually get the money.
Right,
So-
right, which
so-
I think we'll get to.
So even though there are contracts in place, the hoops that we've got to jump through or
Yep.
that doctors have to jump through become so arduous in times where they're not able to get that? Is that what we're saying? Is that what
Well, you might
hear?
get a denial, or you might
Okay.
I got to get a pre-certification or pre-auth I didn't know about, or got downgraded and I'm paid less than I expected. Those are all things that are part of the insurance world that you have to navigate or have a partner that help you navigate.
So
Gotcha.
has that changed pre-COVID, post-COVID? I know you said we've seen a growth in dental insurance being offered.
Yeah.
So I assume there are more people walking around today with dental insurance. Is that change? Like, has the administrative burden changed on the practitioner post-COVID?
If they're seeing more PPOs than they used to and more PPO patients,
just a
yes,
compound,
It's just,
yeah.
just a compounding. There's not a material change on the processing side.
Okay.
But we do have some things I can get into that we can support on that. And so when you look at your fee-for-service patients, though, you got to be ready. If you go fully fee-for-service, you're going to probably lose 40 to 60% of your patients. There are certain markets where that might work, where you're the only game in town, but most of the time patients have options. They've got insurance, and they're going to look around. And so what we often see, which is kind of the fool's gold on the fully fee-for-service side, is I drop my insurances. I get a huge pop in production per visit because I'm now charging my cash fees, my UCRs.
Right.
But I didn't think about the fact that I'm probably going to lose 40 to 60% of those patients over the next 18 months. I need to go find new ones.
Right.
And so you see that big pop, and then
Dips.
if you're lucky, it stays flat or up a little bit. Oftentimes it dips. And going back to the beginning, one of the ultimate goals of anybody in business is to be profitable.
Right.
And to maximize profitability. So the locations, we have plenty that are successful at this, but the ones that are successful are typically very proactive and willing to adjust costs to associated with that reduced patient volume, whether it's staff in the front, in the back. What are you doing to adjust costs? Because for everyone that didn't I've seen locations that are up 15, 20% in earnings, and I've seen ones that are down just as much or more because they didn't adjust costs to accommodate for that drop in patient volume. And you're typically not going to make it up on just price.
I think this is fascinating because I feel like it seems so black and white to a lot of the doctors I've talked to, which is like being in network or being completely out of network. And instead it feels more like it's this diagram of like, if yes, this way, if no, that way. And then there's all these like limbs off of this tree to consider to get you to some sort of final answer. Instead of like the one time I got really annoyed with my internet company and I just canceled it. And then I was like, crap, now I don't have internet because I just allowed myself to react out of frustration. It's like, I'm tired of these insurance companies. I'm not getting reimbursed. My team can't actually get paid from these companies because they take forever or they're denying us for stupid reasons. But the thought process shifting to let's think about this more on like a one step at a time basis. So for our doctors that are that aren't at that point where they're jumping into fee for service, they want to maximize being a PPO provider.
Yep.
What do you recommend as a potential like solution, or what would you tell them to maximize being in network?
How are we, maybe we can start here and it'll lead into that. It's like, how do we support our partners, realizing we've got a ton of resources and acumen to be able to do that. But some of that's got to also apply to a solo practitioner or smaller
absolutely.
practice. So like, what are some of the things that they can be thinking about or doing proactively so that they are optimizing or maximizing, as Sarah said, their involvement with insurance companies?
The first thing, and this is here at MB2 or as private practice, know your data. And by know your data, I don't mean go and look at the fee schedules and what you're getting reimbursed from each carrier. That's the most basic level of data. What actually will help you in this environment is understanding where are your new patients coming from. Are those specific carriers that you're providing those discounts to, are they driving a lot of new patient volume? Are they retaining? What's the retention? You can pull metrics. How long are these patients staying in the practice? Am I getting a return for the discount I'm providing? Really importantly, which a lot of PM systems are not designed to do this, but look at your production per visit by carrier, not your unit, what I call unit reimbursement. So what do I get for a pro fee or a crown? It's what is the whole body of work that's happening on a production per visit basis when each carrier or cash patient comes in.
Can our reporting softwares pull that?
Yes.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes. We built an in-house tool that does it really quickly for us, for all our owners, but you can do it on your own.
Okay, got
Are
it.
there any native practice management softwares that do that?
No.
No, they don't have any of that
You need
reporting.
to pull a production
You've got-
report by carrier and
Okay.
the
You
patient
gotta dig.
visits and dig,
Yeah.
but you can get there. You can get really close.
But you've got to calculate it
Right.
yourself.
And
Okay.
the reason I look at production per visit specifically is because, and this is sort of that assessment that you mentioned, Sarah, on whether or not I'm a candidate to look at some drops, is we'll see plenty of offices, both prospective partners and existing ones, where their production per visit on cash patients is at or below that of their PPO patients, which tells you right away this is a very price-sensitive population. They don't accept a ton of treatment. So if you go and drop the carriers, it's all going to look like you just did with your PPOs because the production per visit's the same,
And
but you're going to get less volume.
That's
patients.
interesting.
So you need to understand materially. And so what we like to do then is to say, okay, let's assume you're going to lose X, and you can tell me what percentage of your patients you're going to lose when you drop, and then how much difference there is between your PPO and your cash production per visit. How much does your production per visit need to go up to make up for those lost patients, and do you think you can do that?
Do you have any idea how many private practitioners are actually like doing that data analysis?
I usually what we hear when we talk like in a discovery day, they'll say, I'm doing so many adjustments for my United or Aetna or down whoever it is. I'm doing a ton of adjustments. Well, adjustments just mean that you're looking at what your cash fees are and what your PPO fees are, and you're adjusting them. You might have really high cash fees, so your adjustments are going to be high. I don't know.
Right.
Right. But then going back down to that true production per visit is a big deal. The other thing to look at when you're talking about patient retention or attrition is when you're starting to look at that data, you really need to understand how many people for that carrier or carriers have out-of-network benefits. Because a lot, like we do at MB2, have out-of-network benefits. So if I really like Dr. Sarah or Dr. Tyrock,
Why
I
wouldn't
wouldn't
you?
like you. If I really like Dr. Sarah,
Thank you.
I'm more likely to go back, even though I have a little bit higher cost share because it's a cash fee. I still have out-of-network benefits, which means the insurance is still going to pay a portion of it.
So if I was a patient, if you were a patient of Dr. Sarah as a PPO patient, and I have now dropped your insurance company, that if I have done a better job of being a good provider and your insurance has good out-of-network benefits, you're more likely to continue to come to me versus like,
Right.
crap, now I got to go start over with Dr. Tyrock over there, who may
Right.
take my insurance, but like,
Right.
is the cost going to be sufficient to make a change?
And so you might lose
Interesting.
if you have a lot of patients. So it's important in your practice management to record what groups they're with today.
Yeah.
Is that how
Because
you determine
you look
that?
you look at the groups. You'll say,
Okay.
okay, I know this employer. I can go look at their benefits guide and know they have out-of-network benefits, or look at their insurance cards when you did
Yeah.
eligibility. And so you might lose 20 or 30% of your patients if you have out-of-network benefits. It might be 50 or 60% if you don't. And so going in eyes wide open will help you calibrate what do I need to do to offset this.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
And what I also like to advise on too is that you need to build a backstop so the reason why that you had that frustration with that insurance carrier, that PPO, yes, it might be reimbursement, it might be administrative hassles. There might be others out there that don't have that hassle and might reimburse better. And because from an insurance perspective, their biggest deal is obviously getting discounts for their members, but then having enough dentists in their network that allows them to sell business to an employer. And
Wow, and
there,
around and around
there,
we go.
there are other insurance carriers that might be trying to get into a market that want to give you a higher reimbursement to grow their network. That wasn't an option 3 years ago. So go out, ask questions, solicit those schedules, and see, build a backstop, and then that makes whatever insurance carrier you don't like less of your business, and so it's less of a big deal because it's just like any negotiation. Okay, well, they're 40% of my business. I mean, that's a big risk, and the counterparty knows it's a big risk too, and you may not be wanting to make that move, and so they may be less apt to work with you.
I feel like you just gave us the equation to making an educated decision and a less likelihood that somebody's going to make an emotional decision. Because, I mean, I know I don't dentist, but like those are things I wouldn't have thought of. And I feel like it would really get somebody in the headspace of, okay, I know my business. I know what I should be doing next or what the potential outcome is based on whatever it is that I do.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Sarah, that I think I at least pick this up in conversations. There is a lot of emotion because we've got partners or prospective partners that are working chairside, right? They are doing dentistry all day, and at the end of the day, they're looking at reports saying, oh my gosh, I worked so hard, and this is all I'm getting, and now it's a pain to get this. And so those emotional decisions, or at least those seeds, you can plant those seeds in your mind to say, I've got to get rid of X insurance because
Right.
I need to be paid more, or I'm not getting paid enough, without thinking through the things that you've mentioned, Clint. One of the things that comes up all the time, like along the same line, is if I only had more or got better reimbursement,
Yep.
how can a doc or a practice impact that? You've already talked about the market and insurance companies, the prevalence of insurance companies with employers and the supply-demand aspect, but is there anything that docs can go out and say, okay, maybe this insurance company is 40% of my business. How can I go get better reimbursement?
So first, know your data. We talked about that. I think always building a backstop is the next step, is to give yourself options so that you can make that 40%, maybe 30%. Great, I do that. There are other options too. For example, a membership plan. You got to know your market.
Yeah.
But a lot of our partners are really successful with rolling out membership plans, which to a patient feels like a discount. I'm getting a discount, and I'm paying an annual membership, and I'll return. And I can couple that with other initiatives in order to attract and retain patients. Your typical membership plan retains like a PPO, so at 80 or 90%.
Gotcha.
But you don't discount as much as a PPO. Right?
Okay.
And so those are, okay, what can I do to build options?
But even then, you're looking at what the discount is compared to what your insurance
Sure.
reimbursement is
Sure.
to make sure that it makes
Sure,
sense.
sure. So then, okay, what can I do? How can I get higher reimbursement? I think the number one thing I would tell you first is don't just think about you. think about them being the insurance carrier,
Yeah.
and what their needs are. Every single dentist that's in this position, the first thing they want to do, and many times they do, is they'll call the carrier and say, pay me more or I'm going to drop.
Or else.
And the carrier will go out. They've got more data than you do. They know how many people they have in their market, how many members they have that they need to serve. They know what everybody else is willing to accept for pricing. As an individual provider, what are you going to do? You
This
need
is
to be
exactly like when I canceled my internet. I was like, drop my rate or I'll cancel. And they're like, all right, you're shut off.
Yeah.
Because they don't need me.
Yeah.
Well-
Point being, it may be 40% of your business as a doctor, but it might be
0.2.
1% of
Right.
their business as an insurance
or
company.
go the
a
other
patient
way, where
population.
there are a lot of markets that we're in where we actually know, because we can go to the provider directory just like a patient and know that we're the only show in town.
Yeah.
And that changes everything.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so knowing how many options the carrier and your patients have can help you with that discussion.
Okay.
So don't just call and say, pay me more, I'm quitting. Right? It's that
Doesn't end well.
doesn't work. You hear that every day. Know what you can do, know what your options are, know your data, and then know how many of those patients have in and out of network benefits, so you know if the quality of your office will still bring them back even at a slightly higher price point.
You go debate club that hoe. You like, I have all of, sorry, don't look at me like that. Your eyes got really big. You have all of the knowledge to be able to be proactive in your communication instead of letting them pepper you.
Right. But you got to also understand what's important to that carrier.
Yeah.
Right. And so importance to the carrier is that they're getting a good discount. So one way you can do that is make sure that your UCR is at market, your cash fees are at market, because they want to achieve a discount. And so
Right.
Can I play devil's advocate here?
yeah.
Let's say if they want a good discount,
Yeah.
right? And I'm coming like prior life
Yeah.
from the medical side. So
Who's they?
the insurance carriers.
Got it. Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
But I'm coming from the medical side. I know you
Yeah.
worked on the medical side as well.
Yeah.
I was always taught, or we kind of discussed like what the gross fees were in the medical side, which would be similar to UCR. It was just kind of a made up number. Like,
Yeah,
who
the-
cares? Because the
the
insurance
charge
company,
master.
yes, they're going to pay what they're going to pay.
Yeah.
So does it matter if you say, all right, I'm going to go and I'm going to triple my UCR, and now all of a sudden the insurance company is getting a massive discount on paper? Like, does that matter at all?
Well, that's probably like a extreme example. It's
Sure.
not probably, it is an extreme example. But having a market UCR at least, because a lot of times they'll ask, okay, well, what is your UCR? So we can understand how far off we are in our reimbursement. Because under the understanding that that's what, it needs to be real.
Sure.
Under what cash patients are actually paying. So it does have meaning.
Okay.
For sure. It's
Okay.
not useless.
It's not just, let's just go throw a number up there and who cares?
But again, as an individual, so we have a lot of things that work in MB2's favor because we're multi-specialty. We're in 45 states. We have, we might say, okay, I know they need this here, and we can work with them on this, and we can also drive value and efficiency by working with them directly. So
We're the bigger kid on the
there's
playground.
reasons that they might, but as an individual, that doesn't go away as an individual provider either. There are a lot of carriers, for example, instead of just calling them and saying, I'm paying more, I'm quitting. Why don't you ask, hey, have you sold any new lines of business that you need providers for? Medicare Advantage is something that's hit the scenes the last few years. They need to build a network. There are other ways that they may not have called you, or you may not have been around when they mailed a letter or called to try and grow their network, but they may actually have something that they'd like you to participate in that you're not today. And in return, you might be able to achieve a pricing win on your existing business. So asking them, well, what do you need? Them being the insurance carriers can be a jumping off point to see if there's any opportunity. Obviously, it helps for you to be a really important part of their business.
Sure.
You got to be a great clinician. You can't be adding costs to the system with unnecessary services. There are a lot of reasons that, things that you just need to do as a good clinician to be a valued part of their network, but also understanding, is there a point of need that I can help them with, not just pay me more.
Yeah.
And I think JT probably sees more of the challenges with like the fee schedule reimbursement on like the clinician side. Back in my integration day, I saw a lot more of the administrative burden. So in comparison, you talked a little bit about how you can combat the reimbursement rates. How would you recommend combating the administrative burden that can sometimes be placed on a practice when they're in network?
Hang on, I hate to do this. I want to
then
go.
don't do it.
No, I want to stay with reimbursement for just a second because there's something that comes up when I have this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
The administrative side is incredibly important, but before we get there, leased networks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Everybody's like, "Oh yeah, I've got these great rates. I just moved into this leased network and got all these better, in their mind, reimbursement rates." Is it true? Is there everything you've said thus far is there is a give and a take.
Mm-hmm.
Are leased networks too good to be true, or is there a give and a take there?
There's a give and a take. The short answer on that, I think, but you need to be eyes wide open in what you're doing with a leased network. So we talked a while ago about how a PPO or dental insurance effectively is expensive marketing, where you're getting yourself in a provider directory in return for giving a discount. A lease network is typically, for anybody that doesn't know what a lease network is, it's basically just like a cell phone tower. They might lease other towers to get more people access to it. And that's the same as a lease here, where lease companies are trying to grow their networks. They might reimburse more, so you're giving less of a discount. But that means that those patients are probably going to need to pay more, right? Because they're going to have a higher out-of-pocket. So what happens in return is you might be suppressed or not show up at all on the provider directory. So there are a lot of leases that we'll see where if I go and search in a zip code for a provider that I know leases to whatever carrier, big carrier X is, and I can't find that doctor because there's an incentive to drive those patients to lower cost providers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you might get the best of the lease network world with your current patients, but it's
exactly
the attrition that you might see because sometimes patients move or they don't come back for whatever reason. It's the new patients coming in that positive.
In most cases, you are still giving a material discount in return for less new patient volume.
But is it increased reimbursement across the board?
No, it's only for carriers that participate in that specific lease network, and those change. They can change at any time.
Do you have any say? Again, this is me just asking because I get these questions, and honestly, it's something that I want to be more educated on. Do you have any? You don't have any say in that because you're leasing it, so you're relying on somebody else.
You can opt in and opt out specific carriers, but they might add a new one, and you then are now in network with somebody that you didn't even mean to be because they just initiated a new lease. So we'll get to the administrative side. Most office staff hate those leases specifically because how do you estimate treatment for a patient if you don't know what schedule they're going to be paid off of? Because it can change over time, and it's a patient experience issue, and it can be a patient experience issue, and it can be a staff issue because it's hard to estimate, it's hard to know what you're going to get paid. Their policies might be different with this carrier if it's leased, and so you might get a denial you weren't expecting. But there are places in time where a lease works. If you're in an underserved market and you only do a lease, then that might help because then this is my lease schedule, this is how much I'm going to get paid. I don't have other carriers that might be competing and would adjust that schedule because what they do is they look and say, okay, is there a lease? If not, I'll pay it this. If there is a lease, I'll pay it this. Dang. And so it really has to be your only thing. And we'll see that work with some prospective partners and existing partners where they do one lease and it's in an underserved market where they're still getting a ton of new patient volume, and they're giving less of a discount, and so they're getting reimbursed more, and they don't need a bunch of more new patients than they're already getting. They're getting great volume, and so it works for them. Okay. But that's few and far between. It's not. I think a lease is part of a component. Leases also work well we have some really good leasing partners that we work with, if they cover a population that you don't have other in-network access to.
That makes sense.
And so you can get a bunch at once, and smaller carriers and so forth that it doesn't make sense to contract with all of them. It's a lot of work. I'll just do one, and then it's fine. But you just got to be really eyes wide open on the lease front.
So to reset and get into the administrative question, which I think this is probably a good segue. Sorry, Sarah, for jumping back. Going directly to the payers probably takes a little bit more time on the front end, but maybe a little bit more transparency and understanding of what you're getting
It's
into.
much cleaner. You're
versus
getting good
okay.
directory location. You're getting real information. You're getting good access to what you're going to get paid.
Yep.
You know where to send your claims. It's everything tends to be
Cleaner.
with several important caveats. That
Yep.
there
Sure.
are places where it makes a lot of sense.
Sure. But then Lease Networks, to your point, provides access some more. So it's maybe a little less on the administrative side on the front end, but seems to be something that
Only if they're competing with other direct PPOs that
Okay.
you're participating with. If it's creating new business for you, then it's a different ballgame, right? Then you're in network.
Sure.
And so we see it both sides, just like anything we've talked about. There's a pro and a con to both of them.
Okay. So the administrative burden at the practice,
Yeah.
insurance companies. I know you said it really hasn't become more arduous than it was prior to COVID. There are just a lot more people walking around now. What are some of the things staff members, team members at practices can keep an eye out on, can focus on, can try to stay ahead of so that they either minimize the administrative burden or they, I guess, maximize the time that they are spending, maximize the efficiency of time they're spending on claims and making sure that they're getting paid?
You and I, JT, came from medical. There are a lot of, I think, and I would say this, knowing now 8 years into the dental world, something we kind of take for granted is that dental insurance is still actually designed to pay you in a timely manner if you do what you're supposed to do. And medical, I feel like, is not. It's there. You're talking about a lot higher dollars, a lot of complexity. Dental, if you do things right, you're going to get paid, and pretty quickly too. And I don't want to forget that that's not the end of the world.
Right.
And that's another reason why you might choose to participate is I don't have to worry about billing a patient and collecting from them. I know I'm going to get paid. But on the administrative side, dental technology has always lagged the medical side but that is where, and we do this every day. It's probably outside of the payer strategy side where I spend my most time is looking at new dental technologies that help with eligibility management. So does this patient have active benefits? What are those benefits? So that I can provide a good estimate up front and make sure I bill with the right supporting information.
Instead of a practice team member sitting on the phone and verifying eligibility every single time.
Right. And so pay it. 2, 3, 4 years ago, that really didn't exist the way it does today. And there's a lot of really good technology that's coming out, and I would pay attention to that. That's something where we've seen a lot of progress recently. So on behalf of our partners, we have a team that vets every one of those that comes in, and we look at them, we test them, we pilot them, we look at pricing, we look at outcomes, we get team feedback. We typically never pick one, but we give options on, hey, we've looked at all these, our offices like this, like these, offices that look like this, like these, and
we had Tammy on not too long ago, and she talked about some of those development efforts, which I think is really cool. And the optionality that you have the option, but not the obligation, so to speak, of doing that. But it's well vetted on our side. Insurance verification or verification of benefits is something I want to say outside of reimbursement. That is the second largest linchpin that I hear from docs. Oh, my staff is spending so much time doing this just to figure out, are we even able to do what needs to be done? Yes,
and that's our big focus area and push right now on several teams is getting nailed down technology that will get that done. It's getting better now, and I would leverage what's out there. There are a lot of good platforms that provide. You need to make sure they hit all the clearinghouses. That's the first question to ask, and then that'll give you good information to at least start from and cut down on the number of calls that you need to make.
Yeah.
And then after that, you got to know the rules. You got to work with the carriers, get the right information, work with your reps, make sure that you're attaching the right information. You'll get paid. It still is more manual than it should and could be, and I think it's coming a long way. But look at good technologies, know the rules, make sure your team has updated information on what and how to bill. That's what we do every day, and we'll work with carriers to say, hey, we just saw X number of denials on this. What are we doing? And they'll give us, for our owners, a bulk set of feedback that says, okay, we'll work on these ones with you. This is what happened. Going forward, train your teams to do this, this, and this. And that's what we look at is what we call clean claims rate. What percentage of our dollars that go out the door are getting paid without having to work again, and focusing on that. And we've got a tool that we use called Inside Desk that does a lot of that.
Yep.
And it's great, and private practice can buy that. We've co-developed a lot of the workflow that's in it today, but it goes and downloads EOBs for you. It statuses your claims every day, what's not on file, and so forth. So building good, rigorous process around that, whether you have technology or not. It can't be something where you print it out once a month and highlight and work through it, and it has to be something that you routinely maintain. And it helps. It really does help getting paid, because then you get feedback real time too. Oh, this is getting denied. We need to make sure we're attaching the right information, or so forth. We provide a lot of training on that, but you can educate yourself or your team through good homework out there, through online resources.
Well, it sounds like a good first step towards problem solving here is for practices, whether private or MB2 partner, that take insurance, is to shift the mentality of us versus them to collaboration. Because whether you're talking about, negotiating your fees or trying to get your money faster, it's looking at it in partnership with an insurance company instead of looking at them as like the enemy, which I
Yes.
feel like the culture that exists, honestly, based on what I'm hearing.
Yes, just like patients have options, insurance carriers have options, and you have options, and you need to create enough options for yourself that if you just get to an impasse with one, let's have other options.
You're backstopped.
Yeah, don't get yourself pigeonholed where you get so much of your business in one area that you can't do anything about it without dealing with it. There is optionality out there in most markets on where to find new patients, where to get good insurance coverage, where to find cash patients, how to market to them, and so forth. There's a good middle ground in most cases.
Is there anything in this conversation that we've missed that stands out to you as, hey, before we wrap things up, I need to make sure that we communicate this to the docs that are listening? Or have we covered, to me, again, uneducated or relatively uneducated, it sounds and feels like we have basically covered the entire gamut of, hey.
This is pretty nerdy.
It is, but this sounds so goofy to say. Like, I'm super interested in this. And so now I'm like, I don't know what I don't know. Have we overlooked something that would be helpful for the docs listening or the people listening, just staff members, whoever listens?
I do. I think the one kind of high level thing that we didn't get into, I said, okay, the first question that we always ask is why? Like, what are you looking for? Where do you want to take the practice?
Right.
And that's under the understanding that a partner that partners with MB2 has a pretty clear trajectory of what they want to do and how they want to grow their practice. That doesn't apply to everybody that might be listening to this. I think the question above that is not why insurance or not. It's where do I want to take my practice and what do I want to do from a legacy perspective, which is where a lot of this fits in. Like, for example, if you said, listen, I want to retire in 3 years and I just want to maximize what I'm getting reimbursed today, just go drop everything.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But if you said, well, I want to build a legacy where I can bring an associate in, or I want a group that would be interested in partnering with me, then you're looking at something else where you're building options, the backstops.
That's actually a really good point. When we look at practices and we have guys and gals that are 100% out of network or they're fee for service practices, one of the things that we consider is, at some point, this doc or these docs are going to want to retire and not be chairside. And all of a sudden, what does that backfill look like?
And that's really hard to go back from. When you're fully fee for service, your team is used to a certain patient flow. They're used to certain time in the chair. They're used to, in a PPO world, that changes. And so fully removing that optionality removes the muscle memory around a mix of patients. But so then saying, okay, well, where do I want to take the practice? And how does all of everything we've talked about fit into the future, for example, marketability of my practice, whether it's transitioning to an associate or a relative or selling it or partnering with somebody else? All of those are y'all know we when we talk to we like to see a mix, not too much concentration, good service mix, things that may not be everybody's cup of tea, but that is really what scales the first decision here on what you want to do from a reimbursement perspective or insurance.
No pigeonholes.
No pigeonholes.
Do the hard work now so that going forward you can enjoy it and be able to transition it.
That's right.
This is super helpful. I don't have anything else to ask. I feel like we got through a lot. Do you have anything?
And my head's just spinning. And again, it sounds strange because we're talking insurance and insurance companies, but
I
this
kind of
is
want to be a data analyst now. Like, I love the idea of being able to comb through stuff and finding trends and making decisions.
yeah,
You
it's-
want to come to?
I was about to say, don't tell Susan.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming back. I really appreciate it.
Hey, anytime.
yeah, Clint.
Hope everybody's still awake.
Oh, I bet they are. I bet, with all of the feedback that we've gotten and questions that we've gotten so far, I bet there's even more. So as Sarah started, who knows when we'll have you back.
There we go.
But
Let's keep rolling.
MB2 Undergrounders, it concludes another episode of the MB2 Underground. We hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you guys next time.
See ya.
Peace.